Hey guys, welcome back to this week's episode of the Sweaty Palms podcast. Sweaty Palms is a music industry podcast where each week I interview professionals who work within the industry. This week's guest is Garrett Cardoso. He's a music photographer and is based out of Athens, Georgia. We talked a lot about his career, how he got started, helpful tips and tricks for when you're just starting out, some tour stories, good ones and horror stories, what he did before becoming a music photographer, and much more. I can't wait for y'all to listen to this week's episode, and let's get into it. Welcome back to the Sweaty Palms podcast. I'm here with Garrett Cardoso. He's an Athens-based photographer and has worked with several different touring bands, to name one that I can think of just off the top of my head, the Stews. And then you've taken pictures for Cannon in the Boxes too, right? I was looking at your Instagram profile. You have really great work. Your photos are just super cool.
I appreciate it.
But yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Garrett.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm glad I get to talk about myself for a little bit. I don't get to do that often.
Oh, nice.
My job is usually like trying to get to know the other person to make them feel comfortable during a shoot or something like that. So it's not usually the other way around where they're asking me all about me.
Well, so kind of nice.
Yeah, sure. It's cool to be on the other side of that conversation, I guess.
I actually had a question for you that was exactly that. How do you make people comfortable for shoots? Like if you notice somebody's awkward or like doesn't like being taken photos of, like...
Yeah, I mean, that to me is just... I find that talking to people, just trying to keep a conversation going is the best way, because then it kind of takes them out of feeling like they need to be stiff and posed all the time. If I do like a portrait shoot, for instance, today I was shooting with Parker Weirling. First of all, not one of those people that's uncomfortable in front of the camera. He's perfect at it. But in general, when I do a portrait shoot like that, I usually meet them somewhere and we just kind of walk around the area, pick a couple of spots nearby, and just have a conversation while we're doing the shoot. And I find that's the best way to keep people at ease, because it keeps their mind occupied, so they're not thinking about how they look. It also makes me feel more comfortable. I kind of feed off of people's energy sometimes. So like if I can tell somebody's really uncomfortable, then I kind of also feel uncomfortable.
I'm glad you say that, because I'm the same way.
Yeah, I don't know. If I can tell that they're nervous about it or nervous about how they look, then I can feel that. And then I start to feel the pressure of like, oh man, I want to make sure these actually look good. I've always found that just talking through it really is the best way to subconsciously get over that stuff, instead of addressing it in the face of being like, hey, I'm nervous right now. So.
When did you get into photography? How long have you been doing this?
I really think it started for me appreciating photography from like high school on that website, Tumblr.
Yeah, miss it.
I still get emails from them, which is weird. Yeah.
About what?
I've stopped getting people who have followed my profile situation. I got one recently saying, we miss you, or something like that. But then I looked them up and I was like, yeah, this isn't a thing anymore.
Yeah, that's weird.
Anyways,
crazy.
That's when I feel like I really started to appreciate just photography in general. And it wasn't necessarily music photography or with people. It was more so landscape photography and just pictures of the Pacific Northwest and fog in front of trees that look really green. I just started to appreciate stuff like that.
I noticed, like, if you go all the way back to your very first post on Instagram, it's landscapes.
Yeah, my mom had a camera when I was in high school, and I never really picked it up and used it, but once I got into college, I picked a camera up. I'm a big car guy too, so I just started using her camera for fun. But I guess I just started to really like it and enjoy doing that. And so I started to get a little obsessed with learning how to use the camera. Probably from, let's say, 2015 on, I started to really learn how to use a camera and like understand the different settings, and watching all kinds of YouTube videos. And I even printed out charts and stuff to like...
Oh, wow. Nerdy. I love it.
Yeah, super nerd. Like, definitely. I mean, it was like, I just wanted to really understand how all that worked and to try and get the outcome that I wanted to see. So the best way to learn how to be a good photographer is to learn how to use the camera in manual mode. I went to school to work on cars because I was a big car guy. So I went to tech school and I got a degree to be a mechanic. In that time frame from 2013 on, I was working on cars as my job. And that's kind of the career that I thought I was going to be doing. And I officially got out of that industry in May of this year to be a photographer full time. So that's like time span of 7+ years, you know what I mean, of developing my knowledge of photography and also finding my way of what type of photography I like, and realizing, hey, maybe I can actually do this as a job one day, and then taking the steps to put myself in the position to be a photographer full time.
What made you want to make the switch from mechanic to being a full time photographer?
So really it's a combination of not liking working on cars anymore. Well, not that I don't like doing that, but not wanting to do it as a job, not liking the industry. And also knowing that I could be booked for a few months all the way out. From May, I was looking at the calendar and I was like, if I, allow myself the time, I can be booked through August, including doing some tours and also just local stuff with AthFest and all that kind of stuff. So it was a combination of right place, right time, and really just getting tired of doing that 60 hours a week.
Oh my God.
Sometimes. But also I was living in Snellville, which is down by Stone Mountain. I worked at the Toyota dealership in Athens.
Oh, okay.
So I was commuting from Snellville to here every day back and forth for 3 years. And that just drove me crazy, really. It really did. I just started to really get upset about my situation, and I just wasn't happy. So in the last 2 years or so is when I started to really take music photography seriously. When I started to meet more and more people and develop my skills as a music photographer, and I guess I realized I was at a point where hey, I can make the jump. So it's time to do it, or else I'm going to keep being miserable.
You recognize a point in your life where you're not happy and you're not going to just be okay being miserable. You decided to change your circumstances. I think that's really hard for a lot of people. Yeah, I mean, it's sacrificing a good paycheck too, to be honest with you, and health insurance. I'm 27, so I'm not on my parents' insurance anymore. So it's dang it, you just missed the cutoff.
Right, I know. I mean, and when I turned 26, I was at Toyota and I was like, all right, I can have health insurance. It's going to be fine. But nowadays, I don't have health insurance. And of course, I need to get it at some point. I'm just trying to pay my bills at this point.
Right.
I'm happy with what I'm doing though. And that to me is all that matters. I get to be stoked about work.
When did you book your first music job?
Cannon Rogers from Cannon in the Boxes. I think I just connected with him on Instagram at some point. My stepbrother, Sean Carruthers, he went to school at UGA, and I had met a couple of people through him. He took me to a Cannon in the Boxes show one time. And so I followed Cannon on Instagram because I liked his music. And sometime in 2019 or 2020, I saw he was playing a show, and I think I reached out to him and said, hey, I'd love to come and shoot the show. I had been doing some portrait photography, so I had somewhat of a portfolio going on my Instagram at that point to where I felt confident enough to reach out to somebody and say, hey, can I come shoot? And he responded, and he was like, yeah, that'd be great. Come on out. And I think I charged him $50 or something like that. And that's when the fire started to spread a little bit with me meeting people.
Do you have a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan for where you hope to see your career be, from now?
So I still don't really know a whole lot about how to be a music photographer. I'm doing really all I know, and that is to just build off of the connections that I've been making and just see where things kind of take me. So it's hard for me to pinpoint. I mean, I can tell you right now, I would love to be on a stadium tour one day with an artist. It really, to me, doesn't matter the genre per se. I just want to be able to tour all over the place, all over the world, working with someone full time. I want to be their photographer. Definitely. So everything they do, every tour they go on, all the events they go to, I want to be following them around with the camera so that we can build this huge portfolio of memories and photos for their career. I want to do that at the highest level. I want to make sure it's with somebody that I've built a relationship with, and there's something to having a really good relationship with the artists that you work with.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It definitely lends itself to way more intimate tour photos and moments captured along the way.
I feel like you'd capture the person better because you're actually their friend and you can see them because you love them, you know what I mean? If you're that
for sure, and
life.
they feel comfortable with me being there when they're getting warmed up before a big show and they're nervous as shit and they're just sitting there staring at the ground. They don't mind that I'm standing there also in their intimate moments. To answer your question, I guess my 5 or 10 year plan is just to be doing touring photography at the highest level that I can possibly get to. Lately, it's been feeling like doors just kind of keep opening left and right. I feel like it's just a matter of time. I know that can sound a little big-headed maybe, but I just know that I'm on the right path. That's all.
You're being optimistic. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's better than the opposite, so.
Yeah, and then whenever I feel like it's time to hang up the travel boots, I want to start a family one day. I've been with my girlfriend for the last 2 years, and we have full intentions on getting married one day and starting a family and everything. So however long I can keep it going without, one, getting burnt out, and two, feeling like I need to like hang it up. There'll be a time where like I feel like I need to be home most of the time to be with my family. So if that's the case, then I would love to open up a photography studio one day. Athens, really in general, I love this town so much. And there isn't a big photo studio in Athens.
Yeah.
I guess my vision for that would just to be like this huge like warehouse space with a bunch of different settings, and you could rent space out, and it would be like a big creative studio. That's a big, lofty dream goal of mine, but I would love to do that one day. One of my favorite photographers ever, his name's Danny Clinch. His Instagram's like Danny Bones or something like that. He's well into his 60s, but he still tours with like Pearl Jam and Dave Matthews and classic names that still do shows. They've had this guy Danny that's been with them for their entire careers. So that's the kind of relationship that I want to have with the artists that I work with. I want to work with them for their whole career and be their guy forever, and then we can sell a bunch of photo books one day and have photo galleries full of pictures of their huge stadium shows that they did back in the day. I just think that's so cool.
What was his name?
Danny Clinch is his name. I like how that guy carries himself, and I like where he's at in his career, and I feel like that's like the model of what I would want to be.
And what a cool name, too. Danny Clinch.
Danny Clinch, yeah. And then Danny Bones is his nickname.
Yeah,
so
that's
it's like,
awesome.
Yeah, that's like classic like rock and roll photographer
Literally.
name.
What a cool dude.
Yeah.
Is he like covered in tattoos and stuff?
I don't know, actually. I don't
Okay.
think he is. I don't know. I mean, like you said, he's in his late 50s or maybe
Okay.
even 60s, so he's just gray-haired dude.
Okay, I'm
You know
totally
what I
gonna
mean?
look him up after this.
Yeah. Like I said, he's one of the most well-known music photographers to this day. So, I mean, he's a big deal in the music photography world, definitely.
I mean, Pearl Jam and Dave Matthews, that's huge.
Yeah, and there's a few other people. Bruce Springsteen, he has a huge catalog of photos of Bruce Springsteen.
Oh, whoa. Okay.
So, I mean, some real, like, legendary people that he's
Yeah.
worked with over his career. I would love to just sit down with him for 30 minutes one day if I could. That'd be awesome.
super cool.
He has a gallery up in Asbury Park, New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
So if I ever find myself there, I will absolutely be going by.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned going back a little bit about burning out. What are the hardest parts of your job? Or the most frustrating parts?
Okay, so concerts, the hardest part is going to be dealing with the terrible lighting systems that are at each venue, or ones that are really good. But I'll use a local example, and I'm not trying to call anybody out. 40
He's
watt
about to.
40 watt has a notoriously bad lighting system, and like it's one of those things where like a lot of people that shoot there just know that, and even the artists know that. I don't know what it is, but I just dread shooting there sometimes because the lighting is so tough to work with, and it's hard for me to get pictures that I enjoy taking there.
Right. And it's really cool when you're there, experiencing it in person, but I can see how it would be difficult.
Yeah,
when
it's just
taking
really
photos.
dark, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like on a technical standpoint, the shadows are very dark, and so you end up having to crank your settings up a bunch, and then it gets kind of grainy. Another thing can be if it's a fully packed small venue and there's no like barricade between the stage and the crowd, then you have no way to get to the front of the stage unless you want to just get
In the crowd.
all up in everybody's way. A lot of times people don't want you to do that, so the crowd is not going to get out of your way. Plus, I have crowd anxiety sometimes, so like I just don't even want to be standing in between all of those people because I'm just like afraid I'm going to get knocked out by an elbow or something like that. So accessibility can be an issue a lot, but I would say those are the two biggest walls that I face as a concert photographer is accessibility to like certain, perspectives and lighting in general. But overall, in my experience with doing headlining shows with the Stews or the Vagabonds, some of those shows, you'll be in a good sized theater venue and there's 500, 600 people there and they have the full barricade set up and you get to just go all over the place.
I've seen Band Camino. I was watching their photographer during
Yeah.
a concert, and I was just thinking how jealous I was of them.
Yeah.
'Cause it looks like such a cool job.
Yeah, and it's funny, like, I've always been a huge music fan. I've always been a big concert fan in general, but Growing up, going to concerts in high school and even into college, I never like noticed the music photographers that were there.
Really?
I never paid attention to that. It just never was a thing in my mind about that. I appreciated all the photos that I would see from concerts, but I never thought about that before until I did it, I guess. And then I was like, wow, this is actually really cool. You get this access that nobody else gets to have. You get to capture the moment from your perspective, and that's just so cool to me.
And if you love the band, you get to talk
That's
with
the
them
best
afterward
part.
too. Yeah.
Oh, I know. Well, sometimes you don't. I'll tell you that. I shot for Houndmouth. They're like Americana, like rock band. They played at Georgia Theater. I don't know if this was a COVID thing or what, but they had a really small crew. It was just the band and their sound guy, and that was it. They didn't have a tour manager or anything like that with them. And they didn't have a tour photographer either. So what they did, I guess, is they reached out to local photographers in every city to come out and shoot their show. So in Athens, they reached out to me. Knowing Georgia Theater, they don't have barricades most of the time. So I always make sure I have that all access pass that gets me on the stage so that I can get my stage photos and adapt a little bit more. So they got me with my pass and everything that I needed to get and like shot the show. After they finished, they ran off and went upstairs, and I never got to see them or talk to them or do anything. The worst part about the biggest bummer to me, it was so cool. I got some amazing pictures. If you go to my website, it's just my name, GarrettCardoso.com. The first picture you're going to see is the lead singer of Houndmouth, like holding his guitar up, and it's the whole packed Georgia Theater crowd with their arms up. It's sick. I sent them the photos the next day on the email chain that I was on. The only response was, thanks.
That's
Nothing
so
else.
lame.
Not like...
I'm looking... Wow, that is insane.
So that's the end of the Hound. And it was a sold-out show, and they had it up on the balcony and everything, so...
That's a great photo.
Yeah, and that was one of those nights where they were perfect with the lighting. So, like, right at the end, they were doing their thing, and with the all-access pass at Georgia Theater, you can get behind the drum kit, or behind the amps was where I was. But, like, I still... got to shoot for a big band at a sold-out show in my hometown, basically. And it was awesome. It was a good experience.
Right. I find it really crazy that they didn't have a tour manager. That must be insane.
The other weird part about that was they were on a tour bus. So, like, tour buses are really expensive. I don't know how much it is exactly, but it's in the $10,000+ a week type deal. Ooh. So you got to make a lot of money to do that. And so you'd think if you had a tour bus, you'd be able to have, like, a tour manager with you and even pay like a photographer to be with you and full crew. So I thought that was kind of strange. I've heard some bands have been doing remote tour managing. Okay. Which is they have a manager that keeps up with their day-to-day stuff and sends emails and does all the stuff they need, but the band just shows up and does their thing and leaves. Weird to me because that's not traditional at all, but
right. Part of the fun of being a tour manager, though, is you get to be with the band. I
I
feel
mean,
like it's part of the allure of it.
It's a stressful job. I definitely don't want to expand into that role because you're just spread so thin at that point, just dealing with the venue stuff and making sure everything goes smoothly. Anytime money needs to be spent, it usually goes through them. And I don't know. It's a lot. It's a big job.
You guys have to look at his website because this is such a cool photo, and just check out everything on his website too, GarrettCardoso.com.
I really think Instagram is, in my opinion, where my best stuff is. Just goes to Instagram. But I'll put it on there too. So.
And I'm going to have all your links to your socials and everything in the description below at the end of the episode. Sweet. Yeah. There's also a bug just like flying around out the window earlier. Yeah, I think it's a moth. I don't know. I don't film video yet, so people can't see the setup. Which
would be a good setup for video, though.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Like I don't know anything about videography, so that's a whole other beast I'm gonna have to tackle down the line. So, yeah, people just won't get to see our beautiful faces. But that's
okay.
Fine. Yeah.
I mean, hey, I don't know if they want to see me. No, I'm just kidding.
Who's been your favorite person that you've worked with?
It's the band that I kind of known for working with at this point. Yeah, the Stews. Like I said earlier, I'm 27, so they're all probably 21, 22 years old, but like they have quickly become some of my closest friends, and I love their music too, and I've seen them grow a lot over the last year as a band on their fan base and their sound and their show. They're just showmanship at a concert, and I'm just really proud of what they're doing and where they're going and all the stuff they've accomplished this year. So I really do think they're my favorite people to work with. It's also because we're so close, friends-wise. So, and I've done a lot and seen a lot with them. So They're just awesome dudes. Oh, yeah.
Maybe the Stews will be your big world tour.
Hey,
they get really big.
I would love for that to happen. That would be amazing. Who knows? I mean, like you said, it's just a matter of whatever door opens, and I might shake somebody's hand tomorrow, and that might be the connection that I need to do something like that. So it's just kind of crazy how this world works. Music industry works. It's just like you meet somebody, and then things change all of a sudden. But you just got to keep being good at what you do and be a good person and make a good impression on people that you work with, and that's going to get you a long way. So
what I found in my life, like for some choices that I made or whatever, maybe I didn't make a choice because I was scared. What made you keep yourself going and put yourself out there to be a photographer? Because I feel like part of it is you have to believe in yourself, and the other part is like you have to be willing to try and not be afraid of failure or fear. So.
Yeah, totally. And like I was saying earlier, I have a lot of crowd anxiety. I'm an anxious person in general, and like I really used to be very introverted, and it was really hard for me to put myself out there in any social setting or anything like that. I was uncomfortable being around anybody I didn't know, really. Yeah. So I think it took, like you said, first it took me being confident in my photography. And then I realized the only way that I'm going to get people to want to work with me is for them to know who I am. If they don't know who I am, then they're not going to come to me to work with me. So I guess at some point, some switch flipped in my head, and I was like, the only way people are going to book with me is if I reach out to them, because they don't know who I am, so I need to put myself in front of them. But I just started DMing people on Instagram. That's how I would start to get to know people. I would go on Instagram and look up the Atlanta musicians hashtag and just scroll through there and find musicians that I like. And I would do that for Athens too. And so I would find musicians that I like their music, and I would look and see if they had a photographer that they exclusively worked with. And if they didn't, then I would put myself out there. I would send them a DM, say, hey, I'd love to shoot for you. Bird shoot's always free because I want you to see what you're getting first before you feel confident paying me to do any photography work. It's just really a matter of reaching out to people. That starts at being confident in what you're doing. So that's why I spent so much time being like neurotic about learning how to use a camera, because I didn't want to overpromise on something, but you do that sometimes. Yeah, of course. Yeah. You kind of have to sometimes. So just to get in the door.
And you figure it out when you
totally.
Are there. Yeah.
There's been plenty of times where I've done that. It's not that I'm overpromising. It's just that, like, I don't know, maybe sometimes people are a bigger artist that has worked with really established music photographers, and then all of a sudden I find myself shooting like Houndmouth. And there's part of you that's going to be like, well, this is a huge band. They have a standard that I feel like I probably am not going to be able to meet. Then you just say, screw it, I'm going to go and just do my best. And I ended up taking some of my favorite pictures I've ever taken. Also, with concert photography, there's two ways to really get into that. It's to know the artist or to just show up and do it anyway. So that was a part of it too. That's ballsy. Well, I used to look for whatever local shows were going on and at 40 Watt, and I would go to the show and take some pictures. Or if I knew one artist that was playing that was opening for two other artists, I would book with the first artist, and then when I'm there, I would take pictures of the other two, and then after the fact, I would send them to them and say, hey, if you want to shoot me like $50, here's these photos that I took.
Do you have any tour stories or tour horror stories? I'd love to hear about those, or just your travels in general.
So over the summer, I went out with the Stews for probably 4 weeks total, I think. In July. I met them in Chicago, and we went up to Wisconsin to do a festival up there. That was really cool. And then we went into Colorado, into Texas, and then back to Atlanta. In Colorado, though, we ran into some bad luck on the last day of that like Colorado run. Our van got broken into in the hotel parking lot. So we came out in the morning, the door handle was kind of messed up, and that's how they got in. So they stole a whole bunch of guitars and food and pillows, and Denver has a very large homeless population, and so there's naturally a lot of break-ins. But they came away with probably $10,000 worth of gear. So that was rough. So we had, I think between Denver and Dallas, we had like 5 days to get to Dallas. We had a bunch of time So we went to New Mexico to just go do some tourist stuff in New Mexico. We went to Albuquerque. Turns out Albuquerque also has a really bad homeless population and is the #1 city in the nation for car break-ins.
Oh.
And so the very next night in Albuquerque, come out in the morning, passenger side window smashed.
Shit.
And they tried to shove a screwdriver into the ignition of the van, which means they tried to steal the entire van and trailer.
Oh my God.
And destroyed the ignition so you couldn't even start it. We got stuck in Albuquerque. So we got robbed 2 nights in a row and then got stranded in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we had to get to Dallas in, let's say, 4 days. There's another band that was on the road with us. Because we had so much time, they were just chilling in Colorado until the last second where they needed to go to Dallas. So they came and picked us up because we couldn't wait. The van stayed in Albuquerque. We had the trailer hitched up to their van, and they took us to Dallas so that we could make those shows.
Yeah.
And we did. When we were in Albuquerque, the news caught on to it and did a story about it. They came out and interviewed them while we were in Albuquerque.
That's cool.
So that helped the GoFundMe a lot. They raised a good bit of money, and they've donated most of it, to be honest. They raised way more money than they needed.
That's awesome.
Than the gear that was, stolen. So they replaced the bare minimum of what they needed, and they donated the rest of it. So we made it to the shows, and the worst part about it, though, is after Dallas and Austin, Texas, 2 of them in the studios had to stay in Austin, and the other 2 had to fly all the way back to Albuquerque to get the van because it got fixed. And drive it from Albuquerque to make a show in Atlanta 48 hours. So they had to basically drive from New Mexico to Atlanta. They had to stop in Austin to get the other 2 in the trailer and then get to Atlanta. They basically had to drive for 2 days straight.
Yeah, that's insane.
So thankfully, 2 of them, they split the time to get to Texas, and then the other 2 split the time to get back.
It sounds kind of exciting.
It is exciting from the perspective of not having stuff stolen, you know what I mean? But look, there's nothing to do in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So, when you're stranded without a vehicle there's even less to do. So we're just stuck in this hotel for 2 days, and then you get stir crazy.
Yeah, I bet.
There's nothing to do. The only thing to do that we found was the Nuclear Science Museum at the Albuquerque airport. And it's all about nuclear weapons. So we went and did that.
Nice.
Yeah.
You gotta find something.
I got a cool t-shirt from that. So.
You need to send me it so I can post it when I post your photo, to slide for the shirt.
Of course. I will definitely do that.
That's so funny.
Yeah. I mean, still I'm working and I'm stranded in New Mexico on tour. Oh no.
It sounds pretty exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's still a part of the journey, I guess. So, and that trip in general was just a lot of fun. We got to spend a lot of really quality time in Colorado, which is cool, and in the mountains, and then in Wisconsin, Mile of Music festival that they do up there. Nice. It's 200 bands that come into town.
Oh, wow.
There's 40 venues in this tiny little town, and it's called Appleton, Wisconsin. We were there for 4 days, and they put you in the hotel that's in town, and everything's taken care of. The whole trip was a lot of fun. This year is the first year that I started flying to go on tour versus just them picking me up. A couple of, small steps in the right direction this year. I go out on tour with Easy Honey, a band out of Charleston. I go out with them next week on the 4th. I'll fly to New Orleans, and then I'll go the reverse of what I did with the Stews. Okay. I'll go from New Orleans to Texas to Colorado, and then I'll fly home. So
I'm so jealous.
Same venues. It's funny. In Texas and Colorado, it's the same venues that I was just at with the Stews.
What?
I'm doing the same trip with a different band, but backwards.
That's kind of nice because then the shots.
I do know the venues. And I know the venue in Austin has a really sick green room that I got some cool pictures of Stews in before the show. So there's things along the way that I know are going to be there that I'm looking forward to doing again. And when we're in Colorado, it's the second week of Colorado, and apparently that's the week all the leaves change. So that's just going to be beautiful. That's one of the better parts about, of course, going on the road is you get to just see all these beautiful things. But I guess that's a product of being on the road with people that you enjoy being with and being comfortable. And
there's a saying, a place is only as good as its people. So
yeah, and that's definitely true because I've done one tour before where the morale was not that good, and let's just say I felt like most of the guys didn't really care that much because they had done it so much in the past, and this time around wasn't as glamorous as what they were used to, and a whole bunch of other things. But it just didn't seem like they were having as much fun as I wanted it to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And another part of it is it was a very cheap, low-budget tour that, nobody really had any money. So that was another part of it. But sometimes if you're with the wrong people, it can, take the fun out of it, for sure. Or, if you're losing money while you're on the road, and you know that you're going to come home and you're going to be just flat broke when you get back, that kind of takes the fun out of it a little bit.
That's fair.
But when you get to a point where at least you know when you get home your bills are going to be paid, that makes it that much more fun, because that's one less thing you got to worry about.
Yeah, true. It sounds like you're a very motivated person in general, and you found something that you love, so of course you're just going to keep getting better at it. So,
I mean, that's how I feel too. I feel like every time I shoot, I feel like I get a little bit better. Mm-hmm. The more work I get to do, the more I feel like I'm getting better, and that's why I feel like doors just keep opening left and right, because I get to finally do this, focus all my time on it. I'm really thankful. I really am. And I get to do this.
Yeah, you're on the podcast.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope you get just a shit ton of business after this. Yeah.
Not many mechanics get to be on podcasts, okay? I don't think there's any mechanics out there getting interviewed on podcasts.
Facts.
So you gotta quit the job and go do something cooler.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think being a mechanic's kind of cool too. Yeah.
It is cool, and it helps me a lot. Like when we were in Denver, when we got broken into the first night, the door handle situation.
Could you fix that?
Yeah, I could fix that. Wow. So we did fix that before we went to New Mexico. I saw what was broken. I was like, oh, I've done that before. It's easy to fix. All we need is like a basic tool set. We went to Walmart, got the basic tools, went to the dealership, got the part. I put it in. We were on the road.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's added value on tour.
Yeah, I was about to say, they just have to keep hiring you. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
If
I
for
can
nothing
wear multiple
else.
hats.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can you tell me your favorite tour story?
Honestly, I think my favorite one was in March, the first time I went to Colorado this year. We went and a big snowstorm had just come through. Cool. We were in Steamboat Springs, which is in the mountains, and we had 3 days there. And so we got snowed in there, and we were planning on staying anyway, but it was like 3 feet of snow in the Rockies, and that's a ski town, so we got to go skiing, and that was the first time that I had really gotten to go skiing, and we spent the entire day going down the mountain. I had done it, I take that back, I'd done it once before in 8th grade. My parents, or my mom took us to Canada, and we went skiing on a big family trip. Cool. I was not good. I did not have a good time. And didn't pick it up whatsoever. Yeah. So this time as an adult, I got to go and give it another shot. And I picked it up, and I was going down the blue slopes by the end of the day. I was going down some steep stuff. Those couple of days that we spent Steamboat are some of my favorite memories that I've had on the road so far. And some of the other things are just the crowds that the Stews have gotten to play shows at. We were in Birmingham, and the Stews opened up for a band called the Dirty Governors, a big southern rock band, but cool, it was outdoor field kind of thing, and it's 2,500 people, and sunset, beautiful pink and purple sky, and it's just, I'm looking around, I'm like, God damn, it's like a sea of people. They're just going crazy. The pictures that I'm taking are looking insane, just straight off the camera. The perfect lighting, and everything is just falling into place. You just get so amped after the show, and then I get to relive it again when I go back and edit the photos. It's all incredible.
Is there something that you're really looking forward to, a project this year that you can talk about?
Let's see. I think the Georgia Theater show with the Stews on November 3rd is a moment that I've had circled on the calendar for a long time. We're going to be filming the entire concert on 5 different cameras with a bunch of different people. It's going to be a huge production and everything, and that's a big deal for me because it's my hometown show. I love Georgia Theater. It's the band I've been working with for the last year nonstop, and when I first started working with them, we were at Smith's Old Bar in Atlanta with 100 people there, and it's all their friends. And now, fast forward a year later, we're selling out a Georgia Theater show, and they're the headliner. It's more than just their friends. It's actual fans that are coming to see them. That's a big moment for all of us. But I've done a couple of live studio performance videos with some bands recently, the Stews and Wim Tapley. We did a couple of live videos with him at 1093 Studio.
He's on the podcast too.
Yeah, that's another avenue that I've been trying to get into is directing those live videos. Hopefully I'll just have a bunch of touring going on next year. That's the kind of the goal for me, just from January till probably this time next year. Hopefully I'm going to be on the road as much as possible.
I'm going to keep up with your website and just see how things are going and stuff, because that just, I mean, your job is so freaking cool. I'm so glad you wanted to do this.
It's so much more than just the concerts. There's so much other types of photography that I'm doing along the way, just like even just the landscape stuff that I'll take in Colorado while we're just walking around. And there's so much other stuff to see, even if you're tired of the concert photos, there's other stuff to look at and admire.
Well, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on, Garrett.
Thank you.
It was great to meet you, and I'm really glad that you wanted to do this.
Yeah, thank you, Zoe. I really appreciate you reaching out, and I'm glad we got to do this. I'm thankful that I had the opportunity to, talk about myself for a little bit, and hopefully I can come back one day and
I'd love
tell
to have
some more stories.
I would literally love to hear, maybe a year from now, or even 6 months, just what you're up to.
Let me go hit the road for a little bit more, and then I'll come back and I'll tell you a couple more stories.
I'm excited.
I'll go get into some trouble, and then I can bring it back.
We'll see you guys next week, and thanks so much for listening.